Committee to order on May 19th, 2014. Multiple items for us tonight, a variety of travel and delights. We start out with a trip to Main Street here in the high school to, we're not going to be.
Public hearing
Yeah,
first.
but I'm just going to review that. We'll be doing a trip to Main Street for a demonstration on robotics, and then be back here for a slideshow. Before we do that, there'll be a public hearing, which will start now, and I think we have a motion to that effect.
We do, Mr. Chair. Move pursuant to the provisions of GLC 76 and 12B that the School Committee of Reading, following a public hearing, hereby withdraws from its obligation to enroll non-resident students in Reading Public Schools during the 2014-2015 school year for the following reason: general district enrollment.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, those who favor the motion? And that will be 6-0.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could I ask Dr. Doherty, could you explain what we just went through for school choice, please?
Annually, each school committee needs to vote on whether or not they are going to have school choice in their district. School choice can look differently in every school district. If they choose to have it, it can be done specifically by grade, by level, by building. And school committees can opt out of doing school choice. I mean, certainly we've had numerous conversations recently about space, so I think for our district, it's not something we can even consider at this point. So that's the rationale.
We have this vote annually.
We have to by
And
June 1st of each
It really
year.
has always been an enrollment issue more than anything.
Correct,
Thank you very much.
correct.
Okay, without further comment on that, I think we'll be going downstairs. We'll be in, upstairs and then downstairs. Because we are going to be in the main lobby of the high school. It'll take place there, and then we'll be coming back. It'll be anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes for the presentation, and travel another 5 to 15. So we'll be back in about 25 minutes, I guess. Okay? Thank you. Mrs. Webb?
When will we be doing public input?
That will be immediately after this as, on your agenda. Yeah, we're gonna go that, we'll go sequentially the rest of the way.
Mr. Chair, is everyone in the audience invited to come see this presentation of Petunia, excuse me?
Petunia will be in place, and for anybody to see, if you'd like to come along, that's fine. And we will be in place probably in the half hour. Yes, Victoria?
Sorry, I'm just confused, because I came for the open hearing and it appears that it's over, so I'm confused about the enrollment. I had questions. Is now a time to ask those questions?
Oh, the vote has been taken.
You didn't entertain any questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
It's tough to have an open meeting without an open conversation.
Right.
With the, well, I asked for questions, I didn't see any. I don't know what to say about that. I think that we'll have to listen. We will listen now and
Okay,
deal with them
so-
as we can.
So I just don't know what all of that you just said meant. So does that mean that Metco kids no longer come to Reading next year?
No.
No,
Okay.
I-
Number two, does that mean that if I send my kid to a private school, I'm never going to get any of my tax dollars back, so I can help pay for that if I'm not paying to send him to the public schools?
No.
No.
So is that a
and
discussion?
The key word in this,
This confusion, I think, is coming from an article I just read on Patch, which announced that this open session was being held tonight. And there were a couple of different things mentioned around that. So that's why I'm puzzled, and I know you guys seem puzzled. Yeah.
so general enrollment
So if I
is
can,
the issue.
if I can, I didn't see the Patch article, so I'm not sure what the Patch article said. Annually, we have to vote, the school committee has to vote on school choice to allow students from other districts to come here. If we allow other students from other districts come here, then the state would provide I think it's $5,000 a student. We can set the number of students, we can set the grade level, It would have to be done on a lottery system. Students would need to apply. Because we don't have the space, we can't entertain that.
So it was confusing because this seemed reciprocal in that it didn't seem to be about people coming into Reading. It seemed more to be about if residents are bringing their kids outside of the public schools, is there a voucher system and blah,
No.
blah, which seems to be.
No.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. I'm not confused.
If I might, I'm sorry that we went through that quickly. We do go through this annually, and we should have paused and asked if there are questions. But it's not a case of, oh, if I don't send my kid to Reading, do I get money someplace else?
No,
And-
no, I
Oh, okay.
understand.
And we've also done a cost analysis of that 5,000. It would nearly cover the cost of the student. And it's also, just from my own kind of understanding, it's also, once we accept a student into Reading, that student is our obligation
That is
through
correct.
the life, through their educational life. So it's not like we can accept a student for first grade and then say, hey, second grade's really full, thanks. So once we accept a student into Reading, they're our responsibility. So again, I apologize that we didn't pause, but we've done this a couple times.
Which is true of Metco also, I believe.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Further questions? Mr. Wright?
Going the other way, does avoiding this program restrict in the way that Reading students can choose to go somewhere else? Is there a barrier to somebody
I
leaving?
don't believe there's a codicil there, no.
So it's purely opting in, it doesn't have anything to do with opting out?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, seeing none, we've been anxious to get down to the Petunia presentation. What is it?
We're going upstairs.
We're going
We're
up
down.
and then we're going down. Thank you.
Sorry about this, we didn't get any.
All right, I think we lost some of our audience.
That's what I had.
Standing up.
Oh, here they come.
Is she a teacher or a student? She was on my song. Kendall, year-old and Kendall.
I believe we're all set now. And we have a
Hello
slideshow.
everyone, thank you for having us. We're from the robotics team, obviously. My name's Caitlin, I'm a junior and this is my first year on the team.
My name's Chirag, I'm a junior, and this is my second year on the team.
My name's Tim, I'm a sophomore, and this is my first year on the team.
My name's Andrew, I'm a sophomore, and this is my first year on the team.
And this is our presentation. We have a couple pamphlets if you want to take one and pass them around, but most of that's in here, I believe. So, what is FIRST Robotics? FIRST Robotics is the varsity sport for the mind. There are 4 levels of FIRST. There's the Junior FIRST Lego League, the Lego League, the Tech Challenge, and then there's us. So it is a huge community. There are thousands of teams, tens of thousands of students involved, and in multiple countries. And all these teams work together and against each other in competition, but they really do help each other make each other better. So we are all mentored by professional engineers to learn what it's really like in the real world, learning real world skills, and we build and compete with the robots that we design. And through this, we can qualify for many millions in scholarships. And FIRST Robotics is really like an engineering company. We use and learn sophisticated equipment like C-RIOs, Java, National Instruments, all this kind of stuff. And then there are strict rules, limited resources, and time limits. So it's a real challenge, and there are a bunch of constraints that we need to come out in the end. It's like a varsity sport. Okay. So FIRST's mission is to inspire, not to educate. It's more than just the robot. It's about the steps getting there. It's not just about the core STEM subjects that go into it, like the maths and sciences and engineering, but it's also about the language arts, communication, business, public relations, all this. It's like we're operating our own business, and the robot is just our product. We are a team, and with teamwork, dedication, and leadership, we will succeed in the end. There are baseball teams, football teams, soccer teams, but unlike them, 100% of us will go professional.
So this is our team right here. And last year we had a much smaller team in size. You can't really see it here, but we had 18 students and 8 of them were highly active, which means they were here every day during the build season, which is about 6 weeks. And we had 5 mentors approximately, so they were helping guide us. And this year we had about 30 members that were guiding, or that were here, and about half of them were highly active, which is a great amount of kids that were there. And we expanded our mentor base to 8 instead of 5.
Alright, so how do we start in Reading, in the town of Reading? So, we had the first LEGO League introduced to us, one of the first programs. That was introduced in 2007 to Reading. In the first LEGO League, students in elementary school and middle school build robots actually out of Legos. And using basic programming, it's like drag and drop interfaces. I was actually one of the first students from Reading to join it. And in 2012, some of these first students like me were moving up to the high school, so it was decided that a first robotics team should be made at the high school to extend the program. It gives students an idea of what it's like to be an engineer. Last year, we're new to the whole program. It was our first year last year. So there wasn't really much planning, much building. We didn't really know exactly what to do. We just knew that there was a game, we had these parts, we got to build something to play the game. So we just threw stuff together. Like I said, not much planning, a lot of building. Wasn't too much organization. We had sub-teams. We had electronics, mechanics, programming. They were just really names last year. Everybody was doing everything last year. It was kind of a mess. But it was more of a club that just builds and competes. Our team wasn't really looking more towards community outreach. It was just figuring out what we had to do to just get started. But our accomplishments from last year, they were really good. So we went to the Boston Regional Competition, and we actually managed to be ranked 12 out of 50 teams in the area. It's awesome for a first-year team, right? We ended up being the 8th Alliance captain and quarterfinalists in the competition. Alliance captains, they get to pick teams from other teams from around the state or the competition, and those teams get to be on your team to compete in the finals. It's a bit complicated, but when you're there, it's really simple. And that was just an awesome leadership position to have, again, as a first-year team. We managed to get the Rookie All-Star Award and the Highest Rookie Seed Awards, which are 2 coveted awards to get as a first-year team, as a rookie team. They were really proud of that. We got to compete in the St. Louis World Championships. Also fantastic. We got to compete with kids from other countries, Israel, China. I mean, there's just a ton of countries there, a lot of teams. So we ended up going to the Beantown Blitz, which is an off-season event held at Northeastern University. There we also did really well, ranked 3 out of about 40 teams, and we're the 3rd Alliance captain, and again, quarterfinals. So we had a pretty rockin' first-year team, I'd say.
Alrighty, so this year, it was our 2nd year, and we really wanted to get a new face out there, and it was really to really get more organized. So instead of having those teams just be names, we'd really have those divisions and having them separate. And so, as Shrug said, we had the design team, which basically made our robot. They planned it out, and they made the specific parts that needed to be machined. The mechanical team physically put everything together. They built the arm, they built the basket, and the pneumatics and programming, they made different parts of it. So they built the air tank system that makes our robot powered in a way, and the programming makes the whole robot work and communicate with the computer we were working on. And the electrical is basically like the circulatory system, and it's the lifeblood. It makes everything work. And so this year we were really beginning to outreach towards the community, and we really wanted to connect, and that's what made us come here. And so our accomplishments for this year, the system of ranking was a little bit different, and our competitions. So we had the Rhode Island event where we actually won the entire event with 2 other teams. So excellent for a 2nd-year team. And we ranked 17th out of about 40 to 45 teams. It's not bad. And then we went on to our 2nd event, which was Northeastern, where we again got to the quarterfinals, so sadly it wasn't winning, but we still got really far, and we went around 24 out of 40, 45 teams. And that made us qualify for the championship in New England, so it was all the best teams in New England coming here. There was approximately 53 of them, and we scored 35 out of all the 53 teams, which is amazing for a 2nd-year team to be able to do.
So, robotics is a very expensive sport. And so last year, our total spending was around $24,000. And a significant part of that is just the registration fees and for the various events, and we spent about $11,000 on that alone last year. And then also, we qualified for Worlds, which is in St. Louis, so that cost about $15,000 to be able to travel there. Yeah, the robot is a very small part of the actual spending. It was only about $2,000 last year. And this year, our spending was significantly cheaper. It was only about $16,000 because we did not go to Worlds. And it was about $15,000 for registration fees this year because of the way that the system was reorganized. And then a robot was about $6,000 this year. And overall, sort of our ideal budget moving forward is about $32,000, including going to finals, Worlds. And we also have an ideal capital budget of about $15,000 for more tools and also to possibly build a second robot. So the majority of our funding right now comes from corporate sponsors, which we would like to increase. And we also get a significant amount from family and friends of the team and a little bit from fundraising in town. This year, if we had qualified for Worlds, we would not have had enough money to go, so we would have had to miss it. And for next year, we're looking to increase our corporate sponsorship so we can do stuff like Worlds and improve our team and also to reduce the financial strain on team members' families. So in order to grow our team, we need more sponsors because everything requires more money. Another thing that we're really pretty short on this year was space. We ended up building the majority of our robot in the hall of the high school because our room is very small. We're also looking to build practice robots next year. That way, well, during the competition season, your robot is in a bag and you can't touch it for in between competitions. So if we were to build a second robot, we'd be able to practice and improve our skills. And we're just looking to do extra events, get better parts and equipment, which all requires more money.
So, just another part of us growing as a team, we're thinking about introducing a first robotics course to the high school. It's still in early stages of planning, so I know there's plenty of flaws in it. It's already implemented by other teams, so there's plenty of documentation. It's done by public schools too, not just tech schools, which is a good thing. What it would do, ideally, is extend the offered PLTW courses. So take some of the ideas from Intro to Engineering Design, Principles of Engineering, Digital Electronics, and sort of bring it all together into one course, one centralized course that just, you're going to put it together towards one project. You'll go over basic engineering skills, maybe review the stuff that you learn in those courses, learn some ideas like gear ratios, programming, mechanical advantage, working with different materials and working with different tools. And we can also learn to manage and support the team as a business. It's not just going to be about engineering, it's going to be about business, running a company. That's really what this program's all about. It's going to be a way to have hands-on learning, actually, which is great for an engineering class. During the build season, students will be able to build the robot, work on it, apply those skills that we learned earlier on in the course. And it would also give a chance for the kids who can't put in the time after school because of sports or homework. If they take the class, they can be a big part of the team. They can help build the robot. And once the build season ends, we'll work on outreach, setting out business proposals, talking to big companies, just spreading out the word of our team. Another thing we're thinking about doing, also in the early stages of planning, is hosting a competition at the high school. It would be about 30, 35 teams. We'd host in the field house, of course. It's the perfect location. It's pretty big. Our Rhode Island competition wasn't really in the biggest space. So because of that, we think that we would be able to do it in the field house. It would just get the word out about our team. We'd become a big name in the whole organization. It'd be pretty cool. Again, still early stages of planning, so we'll work it out. We'll see.
Okay, so moving forward, we're looking to do a lot. One thing that we're looking forward to do is doing more outreach to the younger schools, to the elementary schools and middle schools. We really want to promote more of the STEM classes and courses, get students excited about, I can build a robot when I go to the high school. Also, we're thinking that for selective 8th graders, possibly doing a junior membership. So as 8th graders, maybe 2 or 3 students could come up and meet with us so that they can feel part of the team, and by the time they reach the high school, they'll be able to know what robotics is about. Another thing we're looking to do is community service. So we were thinking about teaching middle schools and elementary schools how to program, doing basics, get them interested and stuff. And then the senior center, keep them up to date on the current technology. Fundraising, we need to do a lot with sponsors and business plans and promoting our team as a brand. So we'll get our name out, be able to get more money and promote us like a business. And then by doing all of this, one thing FIRST is really about is the outreach and community service and the business portion. So there are awards through FIRST, so that would be pretty awesome. Chairman's is about community service and outreach, so that's a huge honor. And then also business awards and stuff like that. And then some upcoming events we are looking forward to. We're keeping busy this summer. We have a sponsored demo day coming up, which is really cool because we actually get to show our sponsors, like, here's what we did with your money. So it's a nice way to give back after they've given to us. And then another really cool thing is the Wyndham Billerica Business Plan Development Alliance. 2 other teams, one's a 4th-year team, Wyndham in New Hampshire, and then Billerica's a 1st-year team. We're getting together our business groups to talk about how we can all move forward and form better structures and promote our businesses. And then we have a bunch of fun events to show off our robot, and I hope to see some of you there.
They're all completely free.
Yes, that is key.
So as long as we bring our checkbooks. Oh, yeah.
Completely
yeah,
free.
Yeah.
And that's all for our presentation. We do have a Facebook page and a website, robotkits.org, if you'd like to check them out. Now I'll open the floor to questions.
And the Facebook page is FRC 4761.
If you have any questions about that, just come to us right after. We'll show you.
Yes, Mr. Roberts?
On one of the earlier slides, you said there were, 30 participants, but only 15 were highly active. What does that mean?
That means, like, there were 30 participants on the team, so 30 students overall that came and actively were a part of building the robot. It was just that there were 15 students who showed up every second, every minute of the whole build season. They were into it, they were dedicated. And, I mean, I guess time factors into that, you know, like, you have sports, you have homework, stuff like that, like I was saying about the class. I mean, all 30 students definitely had a big part on the team. There's just those 15, they're dedicated.
6 nights a week, multiple hours.
Sometimes
per day.
getting out at 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yeah, so that's sort of aligned with my question. So I was excited to hear your opportunity for the class because I think it's really difficult for students who want to try to do that or young engineers, we're talking about engineering things, and also want to participate in sports, but can't be late for that sports practice.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it presents a real challenge, and the class would be a nice opportunity for our students who are trying to sort of do it all, still get to be part of this. And I just also wanted to say that this involvement that you have now, and none of you guys are seniors, I didn't see any seniors on the team. So, and your chemistry teacher, Mr. Bono, would say this too, I've heard him say it to students. So take this passion, and when you go to college, grab on, whether it's the robotics or the Baja or the concrete canoe or the Formula One or the green snowmobile, you get on those teams because not only this experience enables you to talk, if you have to do a phone interview for a job, you're able to draw from this experience or that college level experience, and you will rise to the top as a candidate that an employer wants to hire. I'm sure you're hearing that from your employer sponsors. So I think this is a great experience. Don't let it die at Reading High either. Take it with you when you go to college. And then I just wanted to clarify. I know that the Reading Education Foundation is a huge sponsor and worked with David and Chuck when it first started. I thought that there was also that second robot was part of a grant.
Right. There's money that they gave us money.
Yeah, me too.
They also acted as our
That wasn't a
bank
question
Right.
for the 501c3. But yes, they are a big contributor to that. I forget how we listed in there. We didn't list them as a corporate sponsor, but they are definitely a huge
Right,
sponsor.
I think that's really important because remember, all people in this community contribute for that, but doesn't it enable you to get that practice or move towards getting a practice robot
Yes.
next year?
Yeah, they've given us money to help redo one of the last year robot will be rebuilt once we get the parts needed to.
But do you still need more funding for that too, or does that pretty?
We'll always take.
Okay, yeah. That was a
But
simple
no,
question.
they have provided us with a very generous donation that will enable us to get that robot, the old robot, back working, so that we'll have two very different, fully functional robots.
But enable you to practice like while you're in the competition hold.
Yep.
Well, our idea basically is to build two identical robots of the same robot, which that way we can basically have one that we can just practice on that's the exact same when we can't use the other one. So, yeah, well.
Another part of growth as a team. Future years we hope to do that. And definitely that grant that we're given is going to be put towards putting together our last year's.
Okay.
One of the things that you mentioned briefly in your slideshow was the collaboration between teams. There was an award for working and with other teams, and one of the things I was really struck by when I went to the competition was that it was a competition, and yet everyone was on everyone's team. Because if you if you didn't have a tool, if you had a problem, you could go to a competitor and they would help you with solving your problem. And it just seemed like such a healthy attitude to be promoting, that it was competition in real world. Like, we're going to solve cancer issues because everybody's going to come together to do this. And I thought that was really stellar. And I just wanted to say, too, walking into the Agganis Arena with all the music and the lights and it's not only the devotion of you guys that would be an attraction to this academic sport, I think you called it varsity.
Varsity sport for the mind.
Yes, varsity sport for the mind. It looks like so much fun.
Oh, it is.
It's fun to watch.
It's really energetic. Like you said, as soon as you walk into that arena, music blasting, lights flashing everywhere, you got robots everywhere, everybody running around doing their own thing. It's lively. And then when you get to the games get exciting. There are crowds like jumping up, like shouting, cheering, clapping. My mom, she was a bit of a rowdy one. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, definitely.
Thank you so much for coming. Wow, it's awesome.
Mrs. Borowski?
Thank you. I had a question. That was phenomenal, so thank you so much. But I do have a question. You mentioned the Lego League that you particularly participated in. Were there any experiences you had in elementary or middle schools that were really formative in igniting that passion for engineering, or anything that you think that we could be doing as a school district to inspire that in younger students?
I mean, definitely doing First Lego League, that sparked something. It started at a young age, and I got really interested. I'm like, oh, I want to buy this kit. I want to build these Legos. Oh, wait, it's so expensive, I can't. But I mean, I joined the team, and yeah, it definitely sparks the interest in engineering, science, and all that, too. That's for sure. I feel like we're just on the right track overall, just developing in the town of Reading, adding the PLTW courses, the engineering courses. That was a huge step. That was definitely a big step. And I think it's going to take a little bit more time, but that's going to build, snowball, and I think it's going to be even bigger of a thing in the future, down the road. And especially with our team helping out, we're going to try to liven up the First Lego League thing a bit more and spread engineering, science, all that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And there's certainly no doubt in at least my mind that you all will be professionals in this field someday, and best wishes to you all. Good work, Chirag. He spent all of his afternoons this spring in track. Is there a question?
Is there going to be a public comment period tonight?
Well, it's next on the agenda. Further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Good night. Jeez, these people aren't even going to hear my announcement.
I will.
All righty, then. We'll move on with public input, and I think I'll shanghai the public input tonight with an announcement of my own. it's become incumbent upon me to leave my seat as a school committee person and chair at this time. I will be leaving the school committee on June 2nd at the end of that meeting. I'd like to thank the committees, the students of the last 4 years who have certainly assisted me and been friends and counsel and have persevered through some of my better or worst moments. I'd like to thank committee members, most particularly over the last 4 years, for mainly their sacrifice and their advice and their insight into schools and their genuine passion for kids and schools themselves. I know that my years have been filled with a certain sound and fury, which I feel signifies something in that not only I myself but my family have been fulfilled by the experience to the utmost. Each and every one of them has been a success in their field and delighted by what they do and at home in their work, and actually public servants themselves. So with that, I'd just like to say goodbye and thanks again. We'll see you next week for a few hours, and then we'll be onward and upward, as George says, and looking forward to what lies thereafter. I'd also like to make a point that in a track meet yesterday, our 4x4 team ran 3:21.62, which is the third fastest time in the history of the state in these relays. And they got third in the event. In that, the first place Hingham team ran the first, and the second place team from Woburn ran the second. Tristan Barros, Aaron Lalashore, Eric Safarian, and Dorian Johnson were members of that team, and they ran a phenomenal race. And they have work to do for the next 2 weeks, but those two things are kind of interchangeable and connected. Thank you. All right.
So I know that we're going to move on
Input.
to more public input, and I'm sure that we'll have more things to say about you next week. So we'll wait. Next week or 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So that will give us plenty of time to think of an appropriate
Send off.
send-off.
Balloons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. All right, do we have further public input? Mrs. Lieberman, thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering if there's going to be a follow-up math curriculum meeting where we can get some information on, are there any measures of effectiveness, things like that, what the status is on summer geometry class, some bits of, I actually have no idea how the evaluation will take place. We are implementing this very differently than most districts, given that we have no textbooks. And it's the Common Core, and being that it's so different, I can say how it's worked out in our house and with many of my friends, but do we have any objective measures that we're planning to use? And also, can we get a meeting to talk with parents of affected kids, particularly in grades 7 through 9?
Specific response? Mr.
I
Martin?
mean, I know that individual buildings have had curriculum nights. Certainly, I'm not opposed to having future meetings that we could schedule. I mean, yes, we're in a state of transition, so the measures we'll be using are our own assessments, the state assessment data, our district-determined measures that are being put in place. In many ways, I actually think our district is ahead of many others in terms of this transition from the other districts that I've spoken to. But if there's people that are still confused about where we're at or what the next steps are, absolutely, we can, schedule an additional time for a public meeting. In terms of, you mentioned the geometry course, I mean, that is running this summer. We do have a number of students who enrolled in that, so that is definitely a go. Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of just the high school registration. So freshmen, I believe, that had that on their course offerings
Right.
to be able to sign up
Right.
for that course.
And I have another specific summer geometry question. How come future ninth graders aren't allowed to sign up? How come it's only future 10th graders?
So in other words, you're asking to take that between the summer between 8th and 9th grade?
That's correct, because in order for them to try and catch up sooner, although I don't know that, I have my own feelings about whether a half-credit class can ever catch them up truly in geometry, but.
Yeah, I mean, we felt that, I mean, that's something we can explore more. We just felt that this particular sequence made the best sense. And we also really worked hard when we were re-examining the entire sequence. We really made some pretty significant changes or some additional options available in 9, 10, 11, 12. And so we felt like for a student, if they were going to jump ahead, it would be much more successful for them to do so a couple years down the road instead of trying to do so when they're still 7th or 8th grade. So we wanted to make sure that there were options available later in the high school sequence. And I think since we have done that, I know I've spoken with a number of parents who are even looking at the summer option, and then when they saw the other option available in 11th grade, thought that was a much better option for them, and decided that that would not only be better for their own child and schedule and so forth, but that it would be a much more opportune time and developmental stage, because they would know then that's exactly what they want to do at that point. To move
That's
into
the
that.
doubling up on calculus concurrently with Algebra 2, and it wouldn't be a problem that they won't have completed Algebra 2?
No, it would be, what we have is a pre-calculus elective that's a half of a year semester that's available concurrently. Yeah, so I mean, that's all available on the website. I can certainly make sure that people are aware of the changes in the sequence.
Right, and I guess, is there any consideration of anything earlier? Because I'm just a big fan of catching kids up earlier rather than later. Later, the material is harder, the transcript counts. Anything about summer programs for 7th graders, 8th graders, to catch them up in the pre-algebra so that they can catch up and be able to take algebra in 8th grade the way they used to and be on track for calculus in 12th without the need for summer school, without the need for doubling up.
Yeah.
And which would allow for engineering electives so kids
Yeah.
can do robotics and things like that.
I mean, one of the things that we are definitely supporting, much like we had done in years past, is the students that are in those, what we're calling, giving them access to the enhanced level in 7th and 8th grade to support those students, to make sure that if students are able to bump up during their middle school years, that they're able to do that. I mean, in talks with all of the math teachers and when we examine the sequence, we really are anticipating that as we look down the road, that we will have many more students, because they're going to have a much stronger foundation in middle school, that we'll have more students in the upper level classes than we have in the past.
But maybe it could be a temporary offering things for, because currently, if you're in Enhanced Math 7, the only way to get to calculus in senior year is to take the summer half-credit geometry or double up in 9th, 10th, or 11th grade.
Well, if you do nothing else but stay in that path, students will still have access to a Calculus A course. If they decide that they do want to jump up to an AP level, Calculus AB, there are several options available to them for them to do that. Probably the most recommended would be the 11th grade one, but there are other options available.
All right, so basically, there isn't much consideration of earlier, maybe a slower paced Math 7-8, something like that.
Well, that would be the enhanced class. I mean, no, not for the middle level.
All right, thank you very much. That was my question. And objective measures of
Yeah,
whether
I
this
mean-
is working?
I mean, as I said, we're putting our own measures, our district-determined measures, looking at the data. Certainly, as the state begins their new assessments, we'll be keeping track of those. But also, as we move ahead, just the numbers of students that are able to maintain the path, that accelerated path, because in years past, we were more disappointed in the number of students that were dropping down. So our hope is to be able to get more kids into that path and to keep them there. So we'll be kind of keeping track of that number as well. That will be an indicator of success to us.
Thank you. Oh, and a second future freshman night, is that going to happen?
There is going to be a second Future Freshman Night. I believe they're coming up with a date. I don't want to say when it is, because that's a high school decision, but it is, there is going to be a second one, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Arena, thank you. Come forward.
Just a formality. First of all, I can't tell you how impressed I am to see the demonstration tonight of the best Reading has to offer. Standing in front of you are the next generation of Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or even a Steve Jobs in junior format, of course. But by igniting these little sparks, not everyone throws a football or throws a baseball. We have great respect for those. But these type of activities create a forum for kids that may be gifted in a different way. I can't tell you how impressive it is to have a young man come on an interview and say, well, I've done this in high school. Let me show you a video or let me show you some photographs. And you look at the effort that they put in, and it just speaks volumes more than a few typewritten pages. A photograph of that kind of work is just so impressive. So Reading's really got a great idea here. The young gentleman who spoke about this being part of the high school and feeding down into the middle schools, I think has got the right idea. You get these kids when they're young and hook them, and science and technology won't be the problem. It's how do you give these kids more? They'll be pulling it out of the school system then. Just a formality. I volunteered this year as liaison from a Board of Selectmen, and I just, along with Dan Ensminger, and I wanted to let you all know in case you hadn't heard, and I'd be more than willing to support the board in any of its efforts, the committee, excuse me, in any of its efforts. And I have a personal interest in the K and pre-K discussion that you all were there for that event. I'd very much like to support the committee in its efforts to get that formulated and get it back on track. So please let us know the best way to engage.
Thank you. That's much appreciated, John. Thank you.
If you excuse me, I have another meeting at 8:30 I've got to scoot for.
Well, you can go. Thanks a lot. All right, Mrs. Webb.
I just want to say that there were a lot of discussions at the budget about programming and about why we need space. And I just want to say, the stuff that we just heard is fabulous. It's fabulous. It's new programming. This is why the district needs space, because we are that innovative and we all want to embrace that and be on the forefront. But we have to find a way, so I appreciate you coming to us tonight to say you want to work collaboratively. We got to find a way, because, you know, if we need space in this high school to do that class or provide space for the robotics team, we got to find it somehow, you know. So I think it's just really, it's important for us that people make the connection, you know, not just the people in this room, but people beyond make the connection that in order to do these things, we need that. So I wanted to make sure that people get that connection. It's great programming, but if we don't have a place to put it, we can't do it that good. Not as good as they want to. They were proud of themselves, but they want to be ranked above 24 or 34. That was clear to me. They want to be able to excel and, you know, take top honors, like you talked about your track folks. So.
They did, when I was speaking with them informally, they were talking about the amount of time they come in, and as they mentioned, how much time they spend doing this. And it would be wonderful for them to have a space that fit what they needed, so they didn't have to empty everything out to make room to do their work. And so it would be wonderful if we were to have some room for them to have that.
Okay, thank you. And I'll bet that each one of those 4 students was an energetic handful when they were in the early childhood center.
Yeah.
And there'll be more of them, we hope. Let's move on to student reports.
There's quite a bit going on this week in the school. We have just like 2 things to lie Sky for inviting the select chorus down to the kids at Ocean Edge this past Wednesday. We had the best day. We just laughed and sang, and it was great. We had a great time.
Good night.
Also, this past Saturday, the Drama Club took their yearly trip to New York City, where we saw 2 plays. I went on the trip, and it was amazing. I had a great time. The seniors are just wrapping up. They have 1.5 days left, so they're looking forward to graduation and prom, among other senior activities. It's sad to see them go, but they all seem excited for summer. And the juniors are starting to take on their leadership roles that they have had in the past with elections of student council, drama club, other things like that.
You notice Connor got rid of his red and black.
He's got the blue color on tonight, I noticed.
I'd like to, well, let's say thank you so much, Connor, for what you've done for us for the last 2 years, and we feel that, you know, you completely warrant this commemorative gift that is on your way, and Dr. Doherty has that for you. Okay. And do you have comments?
We've done a great deal of celebrating the academic success of our students over the past few weeks. We had our National Honor Society induction paired with the the book awards to juniors and the Century Club presentation. That was at the beginning of the month. It was a great night. I had the good fortune of hosting, and I think kids really appreciated the fact that we took the time to celebrate all the work that they had put into their academics, and I think a lot of them were surprised by how many people showed up to appreciate all that they had done. And then this same sentiment was continued next week with the Spring Awards Night. Both Andrea and I actually were there, and both of us received awards. So again, it was very nice to just see the students' reactions to being appreciated for all the work that they do, because sometimes it feels like it goes unnoticed by the general public, but it was 2 very great nights, and I think a lot of students appreciate those nights, and it should be something we can definitely continue. Going on right now, I believe in the Performing Arts Center is the Spanish National Honor Society induction.
It is.
So students just found out that they got inducted this past week, and now tonight is the ceremony. And I believe it's also where students are receiving their gold and silver medals for the Spanish national exam.
In the French and the Latin too, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd just like to comment briefly on, last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and along with the PTO, the Student Council also had a bagel breakfast for all the teachers, and they seemed very appreciative of both efforts by the PTO and the Student Council. And finally, I'd just like to say thank you to the school committee for all that you've done to me. I've learned a great deal. I've learned a great deal, not only about the Reading school system, but about accountability, and I think that I can definitely carry the lessons I've learned here on to the rest of my life. So I'd just like to say thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and you actually made yourself an indirect object, I believe. That's all. All right, thank you. Any further comments? Thank you. And thanks to the kids. All right, liaison comments, Mrs. Doxa.
I actually do not have my liaison report yet for the Human Relations Advisory Council. They did meet last Thursday, but it coincided with another commitment that I had, and the minutes weren't posted yet. So I would like to report next school committee meeting on the Human Relations Advisory Council if I can. I know they were working on the art competition awards.
They are actually coming June 2nd?
That day, the
June
same,
2nd, they're
June
coming
2nd.
to present.
So I guess I'll be doing my report the same night they come. But I do have 2 other things that I'd like to report on.
Yes.
If that's possible.
Yep.
One is, at the end of the last school committee meeting, I asked about whether we could have a presentation by kindergarten teachers, and realized, was made aware very quickly of how busy and intense the end of the school year is for teachers. And so, an alternative was that I went on a tour of the Rise preschool and half of the kindergarten so far. There's another installment that I'm really eager for. And I just want to share how wonderful this tour was, this visit, to see the children and the teachers in action, just to move into the kindergarten and the preschool spaces, to see what's on the wall, to see how the circle times reflect the work that has gone on over the year, to see the core standards translated into action in developmentally appropriate ways. It really was very eye-opening for me, and I have an early childhood background, so I was actually, I must confess, sort of nervous, because I was nervous about making sure that with extending hours for kindergarten, that we kept it developmentally appropriate, and that's what I saw. I saw kinesthetic movement and music and art incorporated from the children and from the teachers in what was happening around simple and more complicated concepts. And the engagement of the children and how it was nurtured was really striking to me. I just was very impressed. And to see the collaboration between the teachers and the paraeducators in the classrooms and how they orchestrate making sure that each child's needs were met and nurtured was also, I kept saying to Dr. Doherty that I wished I could have a camera on me, or I could have all of you who are watching with me to see how math readiness translates into action, that it is not children sitting around a table doing numbers and tracing numbers, as I remember all too well. It's children engaged in meaningful and fun activities that they might take home and share with their sisters and brothers, or ways that they can learn in their own way about the concepts behind those numbers, so that when we move to translating our math curriculum, it continues not to be just rote learning, but understanding, and not just coming from the outside, but engagement. So children are engaged in what they're learning and craving more. And that was, I saw the seeds being planted in these classrooms. And I did not have time for much conversation with the teachers, but I had a few conversations with teachers and principals, and basically what I learned was how much they value the core curriculum, the more that, core standards, as they learn more about it. Their reticence from the beginning is transforming into embracing these, because from what I was hearing, it actually frees up their time with the children to include more developmentally appropriate activities and learning, as opposed to having to do everything in limited time. They were able to focus on the most important things, and then other things followed from the focus, the curriculum focus that was led by the core standards. And one of the big challenges that I'm thinking about, and if anyone out there has ideas, is how to share this information. We obviously all can't parade through the kindergarten and preschool classes, but it would be wonderful. I think that the schools do a lot in terms of open houses, and I encourage people to actually go to those and sit in on their children's classes and meet their teachers. I've done it for years, and that's where I've learned a lot, but also to add other information as we're learning and experiencing it here. So I'm hoping to share whatever I'm learning as I'm learning it as a school committee member. Thank you. And there was one other report, Mr. Chair. I promise it's much quicker. And that is that I had the honor and pleasure to attend my first lacrosse game ever. And I went to the Middlesex League tournament where our high school varsity women won 15-7. And I was so impressed by the stamina, by the thinking, by the teamwork. I was very impressed by the game and by the way our players conducted themselves. Was very impressive, and I'd like to congratulate them, and they made Reading proud that day. And other days, but that one I was there to see.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Doherty, you have anything for us?
I just have a
Any
couple of
specific
things.
report? Yeah.
Like Connor said, this is a real great time of year when there's a lot of celebrations and performances going on. I had the opportunity to go to the awards night, but also last week I had an opportunity to go to the band in the chorus concert. And both of them were just amazing to see. And you remember maybe when we were in school about the typical old band concert where there was maybe one or two bands playing. Well, we now have multiple groups of bands that play at a band concert. We have multiple groups of choral groups singing at the choral concert. And we even had an intergenerational concert group singing at the choral concert of adults and students, and it was really great to watch that. It was just a fantastic experience. The other thing I wanted is that the Science Olympiad team competed this past weekend at the Nationals, University of Southern Florida, I believe. And they finished in the top half of the tournament. And so I just wanted to send out a congratulations to them. I believe they're all back now. So I wanted to send out a congratulations to them and all their hard work, and to the parents who support that team.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Doherty.
I have a very one
Yes,
sentence long addition to that report. I was really pleased to see that there are members of the community attending those concerts, the band and the choral concerts now, who don't necessarily have children in the choruses or in the band. And that's a goal of the organizations, the choral and band organizations, to make themselves a community resource. We have a wonderful PAC center, and now people are starting to realize that they are wonderful events in and of themselves, whether you have students performing or not.
Thank you. Committee reports of any sort? Okay, thank you. Assistant superintendents? No, all right. And Director of Student Services. At this point, we'll move to a FY14 budget update, please, and that would be Mr. Lai.
Sure. This was a report that we pushed ahead from the last meeting, although from the last meeting, so it may seem like it's somewhat dated as the budget status is as of March 31st, 2014, but I think it was because it was delayed. So you do have a memo in your packet, and just to kind of summarize what's in your memo, we currently have, or as of March 31st, had an unencumbered balance of a little over $500,000, $550,000. This is about 1.4% of our total budget. On the town building maintenance side, we also have an unencumbered balance of about $3,200. The most significant unencumbered balance that we see is in the Special Education Cost Center, specifically in the district-wide Special Education Cost Center. We expected or anticipated that we would have somewhere around $250,000 just because we were able to prepay special education tuitions. You're allowed to do that under Chapter 71, Section 71D allows you to prepay up to 3 months' worth of special education tuitions in Massachusetts. So that certainly helped our financial position going into the current fiscal year. In addition, we have some placement decisions that had been made that we budgeted for, and they were more favorable to our budget, so there were some savings there. But we also have some placements that have not yet settled that were anticipating potentially being settled, and that don't appear that they're going to be settled in the current fiscal year. So it is likely that absent any of these other settlements happening in the last quarter of the fiscal year, that we could be looking at turning back somewhere around $500,000 in special education expenses, funds to the general fund, back to free cash, which would get appropriated to free cash. We do have a couple of options that I just wanted to put out there to the school committee that other communities have done, and just to put it out there as an option. This concept is being increasingly discussed around my colleagues as school business officials throughout Massachusetts, and that is to create special education stabilization funds, so that these years when we are fortunate enough to have certain surpluses, that we can take those surpluses and appropriate them to a stabilization fund. And it's specifically for stabilization around special education tuition and transportation. So there currently is a vehicle just through standard municipal finance laws. You see every year at town meeting that there are a number of revolving funds that are approved by town meeting. So there is a mechanism already in place. A couple of communities have done that, and I mentioned Lexington and Winchester specifically. So that certainly is an option, and I think one of the potential ways to accomplish this would be to go before town meeting potentially in November for the creation of such a fund, and then we would be able to demonstrate exactly how much money from special education was returned at the close of FY14. And so some portion of that, all or some portion of that, could then be reappropriated from free cash into this stabilization fund. What would happen is that as the course of the year goes by, if you start to see that you have unanticipated expenses that were not budgeted for, that you could go before town meeting either in November or in April, depending upon when we were aware of those expenses, and town meeting would vote to expend from that stabilization fund whatever amount was needed to offset those unanticipated costs. And it would require a vote, a 2/3 vote of town meeting. That's the way the current statutes for these revolving accounts that are created under Chapter 40 would operate. There is, because this is becoming such a subject of conversation, there is actually legislation pending before the state legislature. House Bill, I think it's a House Bill 1862, I believe it is. And I think the actually original sponsor was then Representative Jason Lewis, who now is a Senator Lewis. And this would actually create a more direct path, if you will, for school committees to create these types of special education stabilization funds. Don't know exactly what the potential of this legislation to pass would be, but it is something that is currently is in committee being discussed. So that's another potential option. And again, because I only mention these things because it is a specific amount from special education. So to the extent that the committee felt that they would want to capture this balance to be able to help with stabilization of unanticipated expenses moving forward, these are some options available.
Mary, how does that differ from, I mean, I know with the stabilization, but can't we do the carryover for?
So what you're referring to is circuit breaker,
Right.
and we receive a grant from the state, the circuit breaker grant, and we can carry the circuit breaker account, we can carry that balance forward from one fiscal year to the next. We have to expend out that balance first before spending any amount that we would receive in the current fiscal year. And as you know, we have been able to essentially pre-fund, so we know with certainty that the money that we have budgeted for FY15 is the money that we're receiving in FY14.
So
that's a
theoretically,
different-
some of this money could have been circuit breaker money that we didn't spend.
No, it would.
500,000, no.
You have to keep that very separate. So we will have spent all of the money from FY13 that was carried forward into FY14. We have already expended all that money. And so we have FY14 money that's come in, but we're saving that for FY15. So these are not, we've spent everything that we budgeted for as an offset from the circuit breaker account in FY14. This, as I mentioned, this is a big chunk of it, about half of it is coming from the prepayment of the tuitions that we were able to prepay from last year's budget. And then the rest are just either cases that were settled more favorable to our budget, or they just have not yet been settled.
So does the legislation make it, are they trying to get rid of the 2/3 vote, or make it easier to get to the money? Is that the?
It would be under the school committee instead of having to go to town meeting.
Right.
That's the difference.
It would create a revolving fund similar to the ones that we create under Chapter 71, which are more about school finance, which allows us to create, for example, the athletics revolving account.
Right.
So you're appropriating the money in there, and then you do not need any further authorization to expend the funds from those revolving accounts under this pending legislation.
Thank you.
Mrs. Webb?
So I have a couple questions. So one, to just refresh my memory, when I was last on the school committee, it would seem to me that every year we would turn money back to free cash. So that, I'm guessing, continued in the last couple of years. That's also been the case. So I have a couple questions then. Do you think if we were to do the first option that currently exists through the standard process, that would preclude us from taking advantage or executing on the new option, which is this House Bill 1862?
I don't believe so. It's certainly, I can do a little bit more research on that, but because currently under Chapter 40, you have to reauthorize these revolving funds each year, I'm sure that there would be a mechanism where you could basically not vote that one if you voted this instead, and potentially transfer the balance to this new revolving account, but I can definitely research that.
And it says that that's not to exceed 2% of net school spending, so
That's
what's
correct.
that
That would
number?
translate to about $800,000 for us.
Okay. And so do we have the option to prepay, again, this year to 2015, and have we done that already? Or are we doing that? Was that part of the budget already, or?
We do have that option, and we are contemplating that.
Yeah, we're in the process of looking at what that would be.
Exactly, yeah.
And there are some, so along those lines, if there's some settlements that we still don't know what they are, I think it's imperative that we figure out how we hold on to, some of this money in order to, sort of brace ourselves for that, or just any of the unknowns. So I definitely want to look harder at this.
Yeah, the stabilization fund development would not be able to happen until November town meeting.
Right, this would.
Right.
Right, so, but do we have to turn, so does the 483 or 553 have to go, does that have to go back?
Any remaining
30th?
funds at the end of the year would have to go back into the general fund.
So is the only option between now and June 30th the prepayment in terms of that money? Is that's, you're saying it all has to go back unless we do a prepayment?
If we prepaid, that would not go back, but anything that would be remaining
Right.
would go back.
Okay.
Neither of the two mechanisms that Mr. Lai talked about exist yet.
Right, because we'd have to, the one that does, the process that exists, we would have to vote
Correct.
into town meeting, and that would be November.
That's right.
And
Correct.
the other process doesn't really exist yet. so
That's
we-
correct.
We can pressure Jason to say, hey, move it, get this done, whatever.
But I think, as I mentioned, what the plan would be to keep a very strict accounting of what was turned back out of special education.
Right.
That then the argument would be made to town meeting that first appropriation would come from free cash and would be
Right.
reflective of some amount, or some portion of the amount that was turned back this year from special education.
Which we could put up to about 800,000 in there, so we could certainly, okay,
Mrs. Dawson?
thank you.
I have two questions. One is sort of with my town hat on. So in the past, when we've turned our money back to free cash, is that something that, I don't know the percentages of how much of free cash that constitutes when we're refilling that till that's there for emergencies? And then the second part of that question, not my second question, the second part of that question is, when we have an unanticipated need, is free cash where our special education money would come from? For instance, if we have someone move into the district that needs an expensive placement, would we be taking from free cash anyways to pay for that tuition?
Yeah, so we have typically been able to, and all the time that I've been here, we've never had to go back to the town meeting nor the finance committee for additional funding for unanticipated or move-in placements. We haven't had to do that. However, if we did come up to that point where we did not have sufficient budget and we had an unexpected, unanticipated move-in type situation where we didn't have enough funds to cover it, then yes, we would go to either the finance committee, who has their state reserve fund available, and we've gone to the reserve fund mostly for facilities-related unanticipated expenses, or we could go to town meeting and request free cash to offset that expense. So in terms of your first part of your question, I'm not sure I understand. I mean, we've turned back in the 10 years that I've been here, we've turned back as little as $35,000 and as much as $250,000. This would probably be the highest amount that we ever
To
had.
put it into perspective, we're turning back a third of what we used to balance the budget this year. We used $1.5 million.
Correct.
And this was the discussion we had a few months ago.
Correct. And this happens with other town departments also, what happens every year is that sometimes it's unknown where the regeneration comes from.
The second question I had is about timing. So when there is a need for special ed, does the timing of this stabilization fund, the usage of it, where we're, actually, depending on the legislation, because the legislation answers my question. But if the legislation is not passed and we put our money into a stabilization fund, will we be able to access the funds in a timely way for a need that might present itself?
We would, yes, and if you think about your prior question was what would be our means of doing so, otherwise it would still be town meeting. So we would still have to go to town meeting for additional funds that were beyond what we had budgeted in the event of an unanticipated expense. So, and we have, obviously with a $40 million budget, we have some float. So yeah, we could take the money from other places and spend it there in anticipation of going before town meeting at the appropriate time to be able to replenish those funds through the vote of town meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have any sense of how, how Winchester and Lexington have been advantaged in revenue and efficiency in this, with the use of this extension?
I think that those communities have been very similar to Reading in that they have created in-district programs and brought students back, just like we have. They have leveraged their collaboratives as much as possible as we have, either by using collaborative programs in lieu of private placements or by using collaboratives to provide transportation at a significantly reduced cost because it is being provided collaboratively. I think we all experienced those times where we had budgeted for certain outcomes for certain placements, and those things were more favorable potentially to the budget. And so, rather than kind of making a grab for that cash, let's be transparent and say, this is money that we thought we were going to expend for this placement. It ended up being savings. Let's put this into a stabilization fund to protect us in the year that the needle goes the other way on us.
Thank you. Further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated and detailed, thank you. Dr. Doherty, enrollment, elementary enrollment.
In your packet, I believe this is the latest one, although it's probably changed. We are entering a time of year when we do get phone calls daily now from people that are, families that are moving in to Reading, wanting to know where their children will be attending school next year. A couple of things, again, to focus on the kindergarten. You could see that we are pretty much up against the wall in all of our schools except for maybe Wood End, where we have a little bit of wiggle room with 57 students. But next year, currently, we are scheduled to have an integrated program at Birch Meadow and at Joshua Eaton. So just to look at those for a second, a couple of thoughts. Birch Meadow, we are right now with the integrated, next year, we are at 20, class sizes of 22.
In the full day?
No, it's integrated.
Oh, okay.
So
all
that
of-
means the classrooms will be at 22.
Okay, so you have 16 half-day, 50
Right.
full-day, but they're going to be
They're integrated.
integrated, 22 in each classroom?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
At Joshua Eaton, they're also integrated. You see that we are beyond the 22.
Yes.
So certainly that's an area of concern, means that we're going to have classes of 23 at Joshua Eaton in kindergarten. We do not have another space available at Joshua Eaton to create a new classroom. Then certainly the next piece would be, we wouldn't have funding in the budget to put another teacher. So that's certainly an area of concern that we have in kindergarten at Joshua Eaton. Killam, the tricky part about Killam, we are not integrated at Killam at this point because we're concerned about the number of potential families moving into the Killam district. It is one of our larger districts along with Eaton. So we're hesitant to go integrated because it would give us some flexibility in our half-day. Now, if you look at the half-day, right now, we have one half-day session at Killam. The class size is 24. So we're most likely going to have to split that class, which means we're going to need another half of a kindergarten teacher to do that. We're going to keep a close eye on that during the next few weeks.
John, would that give you then, that would then give you slots for, let's say, somebody moves into Joshua Eaton District?
Only if they're under 2 miles to Killam.
Or if the parent wanted to transport them, well, how does that work?
We would have to transport them.
Oh,
We would have to
oh,
provide the
so you
busing if
can't-
it's over 2 miles.
Oh, so if they were under 2
But
miles?
we don't, yeah, we may not have a bus in that area, so then that would be an added expense to the budget.
Okay, but it still would mean a half a teacher too.
We are going to most likely have to, because, having a class of 24 and a half-day session is beyond the guidelines that we have set up.
Okay.
Mrs. Borowski?
So we'll keep an eye on that.
Thank you. What you were just saying about busing, can a parent waive that right, or is that something that, like, if a parent says, I would like...
Parents certainly can waive it, but we are required after 2 miles to provide busing.
So...
Most parents, the parents we talk to, they need the transportation if it's
Right.
over 2 miles.
And it sounds like, based on the law, a parent could waive the right, but then their circumstances could change 3 or
Right.
4 months later, and they could come back and say,
Correct.
well, now I can, and so
Correct.
we have to plan to be on the hook for the busing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
At Barrows, again, we've talked about this before, but Barrows, that's the school with the 2 larger classrooms and the 1 smaller music classroom that we have the half-day, and we are going to have to split that half-day into 2, a 10 and a 9. So, you can see that we do have some space concerns. We are still in May, so and there are several houses for sale in Reading that seem to be turning over quickly, so.
Yes, they have.
So we will continue to keep an eye on it and be as creative as we can with the space we have available.
So, thank you. Mr. Robinson, a
So
question?
with Eaton, we're already,
Yep, we're above.
what's the plan? Is there?
The plan, we don't have space.
I know that.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna do? Are we working on something now to figure out what to do there?
Well, our options are pretty limited. If you don't have a classroom, you can't add a teacher. If we had a classroom, we could add a teacher. We'd have to make some reductions in the budget to do that, but we don't have a classroom.
Mrs. Borowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Mr. Robinson just asked my question. I can't remember where Eaton was with art and music. Are they already combined?
Yep.
So there's 1 art and 1 music classroom?
Music is on the stage at Joshua Eaton.
Music is on the stage.
And we have 1 art
there's
room.
an art classroom.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm going to be
Mr.
the elephant in the
Caruso?
room for a second.
Sure.
we don't have enough space to offer full-day kindergarten for all these kids that want it. And I see that. I know that we have a space problem. We're not going to be able to solve that space problem for September. We're not going to be able to solve that space problem for the following September.
Yeah.
I think we really do need to talk about whether we can support full-day kindergarten moving forward. And I know that that's a very ugly topic, but we do have enough space if we removed these full days and made them half days, I think.
We actually, in some cases, we actually don't. It's not that simple. And I would caution the committee, and we certainly need to have the discussion, because I think at this point, we do need to have that discussion. I want to caution the committee that if you don't have full-day opportunities for students, they will go to a private kindergarten and then come back. And when they come back, your problem just gets moved a year, because you still have space needs the following year when they become first graders. So the problem goes away for 1 year. I also am concerned with, Ms. Doxer was talking about, she went and visited kindergarten classrooms. The core curriculum now is, stretches all the way down to pre-K. When a student isn't in our K program with that core curriculum, and then they enter first grade from a private kindergartens are not teaching the curriculum frameworks. So now that first grader who hasn't had the core curriculum is at a disadvantage. So I think we need to look at this from different lenses, because I don't know if we want to start sending the message that we don't want students here, because we can't offer full day. So it's a difficult problem.
A question, Mrs. Blair?
Well, I just want to clarify. So I agree with Mr. Caruso that it's a discussion we need to have, but if I understand, certainly right now, we have commitments to these kids, so we can't really.
Right, we've made commitments for the
change
fall.
the number of full-day K classes that we have, right? But for new families moving into the district, I think you have to, it's where is there going to be space? And we may be needing to say to them that we don't have the space for you to have the full-day option. So.
Right, but if I can go back to Joshua Eaton for a second. Joshua Eaton's integrated, so it wouldn't have mattered if they're in half-day or full-day.
Right.
So that's.
Right, there may be, but in the Barrows district, you've got those full days are 21 and.
No, they'd have to go to half-day.
Right, so you'd have.
Because that's
so
a
I'm just
10 and a
saying
9, they'll have to go to
We sort of
half-day.
are at that spot where new families
Are gonna have half-day.
are gonna be at the half-day
Right.
or
And
potentially.
that's what we're doing. We're
Right.
telling families now, unless it's Wood End District, we're telling families now that it's half-day,
Right, and.
where we can.
There may be some of that, like, less than 2 mile away option, but it looks like only Killam would have maybe one slot, maybe, if you go to 21. So, but they're already at 20, so.
Right.
So, and I just think in terms of the private kindergarten, I know that in another neighboring district, the district is trying to have discussions, has tried to begin a dialogue or like invite the private kindergarten providers into certain, let's say, professional development type things to bring them up to speed on the core curriculum. But, whether the level of success on that is very variable. So I don't know.
Yeah, we have done that in the past, and we've had mixed success.
Okay, so in terms of reaching out to
Yeah, we've had
the
mixed
private
success.
K providers to say, hey, we're doing this, here's some training, some learning available to you for the Common Core, because it is, especially if in the next 2 years or 3 years, if we can't provide this space, then it certainly is in our interest to invite, to the extent that we can afford to do that, or we might need to ask them to make some payments. You can participate, but you might, have to pay for that professional development. It's in our interest to attempt to do that. But I just wanted to comment that I know a neighboring community that they're also trying that, and the success is sort of variable.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson?
So, John, the superintendent, so you mentioned that right now it's only what, if someone was moving into Wood End, then you could still offer them full day.
Or if they moved into another,
You could use the superintendent's option, right? I mean, for a family that moved into the Eaton district, and tell them that if they want to go to Wood End.
if
then
they want full day,
Right,
and we would not provide, we would tell them, we can't provide you transportation if you want full day.
but you can go to, and you can go to Wood End.
Yes, correct.
But it's only 1 or 2 slots available.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We don't have a lot of options.
I mean, I think
John, is this a point at which we consider, or at least make clear that, in that we don't have an early childhood education center, that we may have to add at schools, the M word, the modules, or something like that, to provide the space that we desperately
Well,
need?
I mean, we've, you know, it's, as you know,
Considered
as
it,
part of the,
right.
we looked into that, and that poses challenges as well, depending on the school. Not all 5 elementary schools can hold modulars.
It seems one may be more at risk than others at this time, so.
I think that, you know, Ms. Webb's point's a good one, that at least in the next couple of years, regardless of what we do, then nothing's gonna be up and running.
Right.
So, you know, if we can do something for these kids right away, we should be collaborating with those private kindergartens and having them teach our curriculum. I don't know whether we pay
Right.
them or.
We have reached out in the past, but we can't mandate that they teach the curriculum frameworks. They're not obligated to.
Well, thank you. Seeing no further questions, Mrs. Doxler, a question?
My other just thought question is, one of the things, as I mentioned, that I observed when we were in the pre-K and K classrooms was the collaboration between the teachers and their paraeducators, and wondering if our guidelines say smaller than 24, obviously, for the maximum quality of the program, and the size of the room would make a big difference in terms of how many children could be optimally educated in that room. But are there spaces that can handle a little larger class with another paraeducator, or is that a way to buffer some of the impact over the next couple of years?
It is, but those, again, are budgetary impacts. We certainly can do those things, but as you just saw, we just cut $285,000 out of the budget. We will need to cut additional if we're going to add a half a kindergarten teacher from Killam, and if we're going to add paraeducators to some of these spaces that are already over 22, that will be an additional reduction to the budget.
Mrs. Webb?
I just want to say, this is what has never made sense to me. We just had the discussion about what we're turning back. You know, and now we're talking about, you know, we had to cut 285,000. We're turning back maybe $500,000, and
It's
You know,
different fiscal years.
I get it. I'm sorry. I got to get used to school committee again. I'm
and
sort
it's
of.
not, you can't depend on unsustainable funds to say, oh, well, then we can
Right.
get more the next year.
I know, but it's just, anyway.
I know, it's very frustrating, believe me.
But,
You're just hearing it
It's a
now.
rock
I mean,
and a hard-
we
it's a
go through
rock-
this every
right,
day.
A rock and a harder place, since I've been off for 3 years, and it's still, it's, you know, it
And
was a
there
rock
was-
and a hard place.
There was a lot of conversation, not too many, probably less than a couple of months ago, about how we weren't gonna be able to turn anything back, and now I'm hearing here tonight, we're turning back $500,000. Not the school, I'm talking about the town in
Oh,
general.
the town's, okay. I was gonna say-
Regeneration was gonna be
Right.
very small, and I'm hearing about, I mean, it's disconcerting, you know, that number is so big.
Which number?
The 500,000 going back into free cash, when, not that we're turning it back, that no one thought there was anything, they were talking about much lower amounts going back into free cash.
Right, but the town
this year.
wouldn't have known. And, you know, when we did our quarterly report, that's when we did our analysis.
Are there any other, are you aware of any other budgets that are going to be turning
We don't
back
know.
more than expected? Have you heard anything, Chuck?
No, we don't know.
Because
Well, to be clear, sorry, we're giving it back, but that's simply because certain out-of-district placements haven't closed yet.
Correct.
More than likely, we're gonna just simply ask for it back next year from the town when we have to place those students. So it's really, we're not giving $500,000 back to the town, we're almost just sort of saying, hold on to it for a while because we're gonna be asking it back next year. So I don't really see us handing back.
But do we really do that? Are we really doing that? Because I don't recall being on the committee, other than facilities issues, you know, asking for reserves during the budget year.
No, we haven't.
So I don't think,
No, but my point was, and Mr. Lyden maybe can do a better job of explaining it, is the reason why we're giving back $500,000 is simply because some out-of-district placement cases haven't closed yet.
oh, right.
We anticipated them closing and us
Right.
paying this money. It's just that they haven't closed yet.
Oh, so this might be a rare, then next year might be a rare
Yeah, this is not a
occurrence where-
sustainable amount of money that we're going to be
No, no, no,
turning
but I
back
mean-
every year.
I get it, but even going to, we might need to go to the FinCom sometime next year and say, hey, these cases settled, and, you know, we need $100,000 now. We turned back, you know, 480, but now we need 100,000 for
Potentially.
this settlement. And that would be something that we really haven't done before in the past as a
Agreed.
committee. I want to pay forward. Sorry.
I mean, all I'm saying is it
Against
goes
the
to the
rules.
point that you can't sit up there and predict what regeneration's
Right.
gonna be, and that's what was tried, they tried to do that at that meeting.
Right.
Ms. Borowski?
Thank you, Mr.
Let's
Chair.
go.
I just want to make the brief comment that the exact discussion that just happened here goes back to the discussion of a stabilization fund. That whole discussion is why a stabilization
Yes,
fund
exactly.
is probably a wise thing. And also, a quick question, I should know this. The Finance Committee Reserve Fund, it's not huge.
150,000.
I was thinking
150,000.
150, and some of these out-of-district placements,
We've never gone to that for an out-of-district placement.
I know, but I'm just saying the idea that we could a stabilization fund seems like a wise direction to go in, is the statement I'm making.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Doherty, and we'll move on to a more mild issue. We'll get to the Early Childhood Education Center discussion.
This is kind of the segue.
Yes, we'll put our shoes on and jump in.
I asked the chair to put this on the agenda because I felt that, and we were going to discuss this at the last meeting, but for the committee to have a discussion of, you know, what you would like to see as next steps. I think we heard lots of things at town meeting. And there are certainly plans in place for there to be a summer financial forum to have discussions about priorities of capital projects, which the school committee will be a part of those discussions. But we're, you know, certainly looking to direction from the committee on what you see as next steps. We're looking into doing the geotech work, the traffic study work, and maybe some other analysis of questions that had come up during discussions to get some firmer answers on. So I felt this would be a good opportunity to look for some direction.
Mr. Robinson?
I guess from my standpoint, you really just said what I want to see once we have the geotech and the analysis and the traffic study, then it's time to reconvene everybody. I guess, would that be August or?
The traffic study probably won't get done now till fall, because you want to do the traffic study when it's at its peak. And we've lost that window. You know, because seniors are leaving, so your traffic is going to be less. So you would want to wait till fall to do traffic study. Geotech, we can do now. So that definitely can happen.
Mrs. Doxer?
I'm wondering if you were successful in finding out whether the geotech, there have been people that have come up to me about the Oakland Road site, the other side of the road, saying
I've
it
not
had
been able to
been
get an answer on that yet.
investigated.
If that was ever done before, I haven't been able to get that answer yet.
What other side are we talking about?
If there was ever a geotech study done on Oakland Road in the past, because it's been looked at for different projects, the police station
Yeah.
at one time, no one seems to think
Bill Brown
anything
knows
was.
everything about the property. He's never said anything.
Yeah, and no one has ever brought that up, but.
Hasn't been done.
I was actually gonna reach out to Peter Hackenbleckner to see
see if he
would know. My guess is if it did happen, he would know, but I have not had the opportunity to reach out to him yet.
It was brought up to me in conjunction with a discussion about the potential of putting a police or fire station there.
At the police
At one
station
point.
at one point, but that was well before they actually built it. They were looking at that as a potential.
Right, but this person seemed to think that the studies had been done, so I'd love to make sure they're not in a file drawer somewhere.
Yes, Mrs. Buck?
So I have, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a little bit of a concern as we look at this, and you're asking, what should we be doing now going, in this time where we're getting the study and maybe waiting for the traffic study and the financial forum, is that I think that generally there's discussion around town that a lot of people seem to say, okay, I might agree with these concepts about early childhood, and I think Mrs. Doxer gave a great bird's eye view of the kindergarten classroom and sort of the Common Core and some of those issues, but people not sensing, not feeling, embracing the need for more space. And I think part of that is because people don't realize that the programming is what's taking the space. So people focus on enrollment numbers, right, and don't realize that the programming takes the space. And so I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of is have people understand that, the number, so a lot of it is some special ed and separate classrooms, and we've done a lot with whole child and, well-being and the wellness programs. These things all take more space. And elementary similarly. And I know RISE talked about STEM. They talked about space. We need space for art, music, and science. And we need that at the elementary level too. So one of the things that's missing is I think people in general are not embracing new building. I think the town, we have that whole operational override thing in the background, which isn't helping. And then the capital, the library took a big, that was a big chunk out of people's angst in terms of, that townwide vote and how those percentages turned out. So I think we're really up against that, and I'm just really, really concerned that, as Mr. Caruso talked about, we're not gonna, we weren't gonna solve this space problem for 2 years, even if we had gotten the go-ahead for the schematic. It was gonna be 2 years for the schematic
Right.
design. So how are we going to do not only this, but the programming that we need to do, like we heard about today? So I think trying to get the message out that the programming that people expect, delivering the kind of curriculum and opportunity that make the students energized and inspired, takes space. And I also think in past situations like when we did the Wood End School, there were scores, gads of young elementary parents with the young kids that were engaged and involved, that got voted on town meeting, that were part of the process. Now, looking at these enrollment numbers, they may come out of the woodwork and help us embrace and deliver this message. But I think we have to do a better job if we're going to convince people we need space, whether it's new space that we need to build, or if there's some miracle of availability of space, which I don't know. I heard Longwood was turning over, but still going to be assisted living, so not a school again.
No
Yeah, they
no
just
question? Is there a question?
One of the primary things that I'm hearing goes back to something you said, Mrs. Webb, about the financial stress that people under fixed income are under, and I think there are people out there who might be supportive of the full-day kindergarten and the facility, but they're overwhelmed by the prospects of another override by the raised taxes. And it's not that they're against it, they just can't see their way to pay for it. And so one of the things that I was wondering if we could put into process at the same time as educating people is looking into creative funding options that might fray some of the costs, that might, I don't know whether SEAM can help us, but I'm not educated on this, but ways to find out about other grants that might help fray it. But also, from the other end, I know in the past there were programs in town, in Reading, there are programs in Winchester, there are programs in Wakefield that help seniors and those strained by their taxes to find other ways to to work off some of their taxes.
The town does have.
And I wrote about
a
that
program.
when, through school notes, so, but people don't seem to know about that either. So partially finding, I don't know what jobs already, volunteer positions already exist for people that are looking for ways to work off their taxes, so to speak, or just getting the word out that there are those opportunities for people so that they might be able to consider something like that, knowing that they might be able to help themselves pay their taxes when they're raised. Just, it's an education piece and it's a creative funding
Okay, thank you.
approach.
Further commentary? Input? Thank you very much. I think we're directionless right now. I think we do have to
Well,
wait on a few things.
One thing I know that was discussed at an earlier meeting was to form a new working group of people that were part from the old working group, but part other people that may have a vested interest in the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to bring that up, so I'm glad that you did, because that was a thought that I'd been playing around with. And my only concern about waiting till August is the lack, losing energy and losing momentum around this. And if we could, I don't know, I'm still thinking it through, but I think there could be value in getting a group of people together, largely many of the people who are already involved, but some new players too,
Yes.
some new faces, to try to get some expanded ownership and education and expanded ownership of a problem that needs to be solved in our community. I don't view this as we need an early childhood center. I view this as we have a problem
Right.
that we as a community need to solve. It isn't a school problem, it's a community problem. And I don't exactly know what that group looks like or how often it meets or even what it's tasked with. And part of it could be starting the group with what are we doing here? Let's articulate the problem, let's go over the numbers again. And then what will we as a group do to help solve that problem? And it could be, the decision will be, let's wait till we get the geotech and the traffic study. That might be the very next step. But it's an opportunity to go back over the steps that have been taken and what did we miss and are there any options we should look at again?
And I think that's important. There were several things that were stated at town meeting that I think were misperceptions that we probably should revisit with people. And, I mean, if you want, I can come back at the next meeting with a potential group. Not people's names, but what that could look like.
And perhaps we could all brainstorm individually and send you a list.
Yep,
Say,
that
okay,
would be great.
It should include this person, it should include someone from this board, it should include someone, and then you could compile that and bring it back to us for discussion. So-
And we have to keep the original committee intact and involve them in this.
The working group.
And, I suspect that a good number of them are waiting to do something, but this is a tough time of year to do that, to collate energy and, but to keep them involved, to let them know that things are moving, but really can't do much in the summer. We'll have to wait till the fall, actually. Yes.
Just to sort of carry on with Jean's conversation here about, what does the group do? I think if you look at one of the things the group does is going to make a presentation to the financial forum, or at the financial forum, whenever that is if that's in August. Did somebody say that? I wrote something down. No, but Chuck, were they thinking of financial forum over the summer, potentially? Because I would think
Oh, I
this-
know.
Oh.
I'm assuming that would be was the format that I guess some of the selectmen or the town manager suggested.
But
I
this.
think, so, yeah, some of the selectmen.
Okay, so this group would be a group that could help basically work through, what is the problem, get the clarity that's really needed, which is gonna mean taking a lot of the information that's already there.
Yeah.
But I think, so in terms of what is the group,
And some
the
new
goal-
information.
Right, and new information, the goal is to be able to go to the financial forum and be able to make a presentation to that body and the public who attend that forum meeting about, this is where we are on this subject of early childhood education, and, this is what we need to do, this is what we've looked at. So I think that's something that is important in terms of if you're gonna make that a productive financial forum in August or September, you gotta have, a good layout of the information. And this is a group that could probably work that.
Mrs. Doxer?
Do we know yet the timing of this financial forum? Is it June, July, August?
I'm not sure. The town manager indicated that they're creating a draft schedule for the whole year, and I believe there's at least 4 financial forums that are being scheduled, one being this summer, but I don't know when that has been. My guess is it's July, but I don't know that.
To be productive.
I'm thinking that it would, like you said, be beneficial to have some sort of a group before that happens, so that we'll have informed people going. I'm also thinking that it might be helpful during the summer, when things can sometimes be more casual, to have maybe some house meetings where people can, neighborhood coffees, where people can ask their questions and we can share information, collect their concerns. Just, it's a technique, a way to start the conversations and get people interested. Direct them to YouTube presentations. Not a whole presentation on it, but rather engaging people that might not yet know. Because I think as many information sessions as we've had, there are still people that just haven't gotten engaged yet.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Ms. Borowski?
Thank you. One thing, if we did decide to go down this road, one thing that I do feel strongly about is that these be open meetings, so that they have.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah.
that is something that,
Yep.
that they be published, members of the public know that they're happening, can come, and that might answer some of your questions. When people are hearing around town, oh, there's a group working on the space needs and it hasn't gone away, they go to the website and there's the agenda and there's the meeting, and you can come and there's public input at the start, so that would be something.
Okay, Mrs. Doxer?
I'm wondering also that everyone is so busy that sometimes, and I know you can sign up to get notices for open meetings, but if we were to collect an email distribution list of people that are interested in knowing when these,
We actually have, all the people that attended the information sessions, we have their emails.
right.
So that's over 100 people that we can reach out to others as well.
And I think that when we have our meetings, to send out like a blast to remind them that these meetings are happening and that they can come in their sweats.
And I think.
Shorts.
Or
I don't know
shorts.
whether-
I hope.
whether somebody said it or not, but the existing working group should be included. I mean, they didn't sit on
That's
their
right.
hands for.
I agree, yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. I
Okay, that's
suspect,
helpful.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you, and perhaps next week we'll have superintendent's report on this issue and the
Yes.
collated notes that you have there. We'll make those public. Thank you. Okay, we have appointments to collaboratives coming up.
Yes. So to give a little context, each year, under the new regulations, the school committee is required to appoint superintendent to the collaboratives. We belong to 2 collaboratives, the SEAM Collaborative and the North Shore Education Consortium. So I would need your approval to continue representing the school department on those two collaboratives.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a
Thank
motion.
you. Do you have a
Move to-
motion in
Yeah, I
that
certainly
regard?
do. Move to appoint Superintendent John Doherty as the Reading Public Schools representative to the Board of Directors of the North Shore Education Consortium for the 2014-15 school year.
I second it.
We have a second discussion?
Quick question, is it typical that the superintendent of districts is the representative, is that sort of standard
Yeah, the
operating
regulations say it
procedures?
either can be the superintendent or a member of the school committee.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, please.
In your experience being the representative, is it typically the superintendent? What's the percentage?
There are no school committee members currently on either collaborative that we belong to.
So roughly 100%.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
The meetings are usually held during the day. They are public meetings, so anyone can attend.
Thank you very much.
Further discussion? Those in favor of the motion?
Mr. Chair, move to
Motion is
appoint
passed.
Superintendent John Doherty as the Reading Public Schools representative to the Board of Directors of the SEAM Collaborative for the 2014-15 school year.
Second.
We have a second discussion. Comments? Those in favor of the motion? Thank you. That's 5.
Oh, sorry.
That'll be 6.
If I could just add one other piece to this, and I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but at a future meeting, I will be asking the school committee to approve what are called the Articles of Agreement for both collaboratives. Again, this is under the regulations. In order for the Articles Agreement to become enacted by the collaborative, every school committee has to approve those articles. So with the SEAM Collaborative, it would be 10 school districts. With the North Shore, it would be 18. So the articles is really how the collaborative does business. So once I get those, because the state has to approve them first to make sure they follow the regulations, then I will move those to the school committee. But that may be during the summer, it may be in the fall.
Thank you.
The legal counsel is here for the executive session, so this probably would be an appropriate time to go in executive session.
That would be a good, the superintendent's goals will be put on hold.
We can do
for
it
a bit.
after executive. I think-
No, we can't.
Could we do it briefly
We
beforehand?
do it
Can we do it on the next meeting?
Yeah.
Wait, is there a timeline?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You gotta have it.
you're gonna have to
Okay.
come back into public session.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do we have a motion? In
Yeah,
regard
we
to
do reluctantly, Mr. Chair. Move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, collective bargaining, and approval of minutes, and to return to open session.
At approximately, what do you?
Tomorrow? 9:30.
9:30. No, we
Say
best make it
9:40.
9:40 is good. Okay. We are adjourned. Do we have hands? Singular?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Oh, sorry, yes.
We'll reconvene the May 19th, 2014 Reading School Committee meeting. And we will begin initially with the superintendent's goals. And
So you have a rather lengthy update in your packet, which I'm not going to sit here and read to you. But what I've done is I have captured the status of the different steps in the goals that I presented to you in the fall. And you can certainly look at those at your leisure, and I can answer any specific questions. What I do need from the committee tonight is, this is the beginning of the process for my evaluation. And so the way it works is that usually the chair assigns a designee to work with me to get the committee's information on the evaluation process. And what they would do is they would complete the document that I have included in the packet, which is called the Superintendent Evaluation Summative Evaluation Form. Each school committee member completes this as a draft, and then I meet with each individual member separately, and we discuss the information that you've put down, if you have any specific questions or clarifications. Then you have the ability to change that or submit it as is. And then that goes to the person that you've appointed, along with comments. And then there are both the comments and an aggregate is put together, which is then presented at a future school committee date as a public document, as part of the evaluation. Everything is done in public in that process.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Webb?
I would volunteer to do that, as I did do that before, so if someone, unless someone else would like to volunteer.
Second.
That was really quick.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
in that case, we
Do we have to vote?
certainly
Do we have to make a
we
motion?
appreciate.
No, you don't need to make a motion.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, we
Is
have.
the timeline in here?
No, I can work with you on that.
Okay.
The other piece, which again, I just want to make sure everyone is on the same page, is are all committee members participating, including the people that were elected in April?
Yes.
So I think that's something the committee needs to, so that
Yeah.
everyone has the
Yes.
same.
I think, I'm sorry. I
Yes,
think
Mr. Robbins.
Typically, we, at least, my memory is that we leave that up to those individuals.
Right.
If they feel comfortable participating, if they don't feel comfortable, that's okay too. So.
Okay. I just want, so that everyone was on the same page.
Can I ask
Okay,
a clarifying
good.
question about that?
Yes, Mrs. Burley.
Presumably then an individual could fill in portions that they felt that they did have, they can refrain from areas, okay. It's not an all or nothing.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Further questions, discussion? Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much, yes. And the collator
So-
for the
You and I can sit
superintendent's
down.
goals will be Mrs. Webb. Thank you again. All right. And
If we
Director?
could go to next, the intermunicipal agreement?
That would be the approval of school nutrition director, 3-year intermunicipal agreement. And advice and discussion?
Sure, yes. You have a copy in your packet of the red line version of the intermunicipal agreement that we're proposing. This has been updated. If you recall, we did this for a 1-year term, sort of as a pilot project. It has worked out very well. Kristen continues to provide excellent direction and leadership to our school nutrition department, but in addition, she's doing fabulously for Wakefield as well. They're very happy. She went into a district that had a fairly significant negative balance. They had to offset their food service revolving account with contributions from their general fund, and she believes that this year she may be very close to breaking even, which is a huge accomplishment. So they are very happy and would like to continue this. So the marked up version just shows the changes. Really, the only changes is that we've proposed that over the 3-year period, we increase the amount that Wakefield pays to us by 2.5% from where we are this year to next year, and then 2.5% in each of the subsequent years as well, and then updating the term to reflect a 3-year term that we would want to do this for. So that's essentially the changes. Because it is essentially us sharing with Wakefield, we do need this intermunicipal agreement, so you would approve it, and the Board of Selectmen have it on their agenda to approve at their May 27th meeting as well.
I have a motion,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Motion?
Move to authorize the superintendent to enter into the proposed 3-year intermunicipal agreement between the Reading and Wakefield Public Schools.
Second.
You have a second? Further discussion?
I actually
Mrs.
just have a
Snowdrop?
question. I also heard from Wakefield a ways back when I was presenting there, how happy they were with it. I'm just wondering, do you know how is Kristen also happy with it?
Absolutely, yes. She was the
would wanna
first
make
conversation
sure.
I had, yeah. She was very supportive of continuing this relationship with Wakefield.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? So
Yes.
who presents this, when this goes to the selectmen for approval? Does somebody, you're gonna
Yep,
present
I
it
will
to
be.
them?
Yep,
Okay.
I'll be presenting that, yep.
Thank you.
Further questions? Those in, from the public?
She was Reading's director prior, and then you took on Wakefield, is that?
She is
She
Reading's
is
director.
now.
She's employed by the town of Reading currently. She continues to be an employee of Reading Public Schools. And, you know, we pay her benefits and we evaluate, although Wakefield has input into her evaluation. But we are essentially loaning for a fee our director to Wakefield
So she
to
was
provide
here
leadership.
for some amount of years before.
Yes, she's been employed in the district for 10 years.
And
Mr.
we've been
Caruso?
loaning her out to Wakefield
For one, just for
for
1
a
year.
year
This-
already.
This year.
This is a continuation of something that's
Exactly.
been in place for a year. Thank you.
Further questions? Okay. Thank you. Those in favor of that motion? Thank you, 6-0. And we
Mr. Croft, I would propose
table the
that,
motion, and Director of Finance and Operations.
I would propose that you could table that one until June 2nd.
Yes, I think that,
Because we will not have done the interviews yet, so.
Yeah, good.
What are we doing?
with advice, we are,
Qualities of our next.
with the professional advice, we've decided to
Table to June.
defer the Director of Finance and
I do,
Operations.
there is one thing I
qualities
do
till
want to bring
June
up,
2nd.
and it's something to keep in the back of your mind, is that you may want to set a date of June 9th for the committee to be interviewing the finalists. And, because the way it's set up right now is the committee would be doing an appointment on June 16th. I would recommend that you do the interviews on the 9th. That there is not a meeting scheduled for the 9th right now. The screening committee will be done with their interviews on the 5th. They'll be recommending finalists on that night. Those finalists could then be interviewed on the 9th by the school committee, and you would then have the option of appointing someone on the 9th or at a subsequent meeting that week or on the 16th. I think the sooner, I'm concerned about timelines, and the sooner that someone is appointed, the sooner they can begin, because don't forget, that person, whoever it may be, would have to give a notice to their employer. So I would recommend that you perhaps leave the 9th as a night to interview the finalists. If that's agreeable to the
Is that
committee.
okay?
It's a Monday night.
That would add a
Some of
Monday
us won't
night
be
to
here
your
on the night.
activities there. I feel fine about this,
Yeah.
very solicitous.
Dr. Doherty, if-
My
if it's
availability is
okay, We
obvious.
should be posted June 9th then.
Okay,
That's what
I-
we need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What day is that?
It's a Monday.
Monday
It's
after
a Monday.
graduation.
We can cancel a meeting if it's not.
Yeah, you may be able to cancel the 16th then, which,
Thank you very much for the recommendation. We'll do that.
I like that
Thank
idea.
Me too.
I like
Are you
canceling.
getting, excuse me.
Those in
are
the
you
sitting
receiving-
committee
We are.
may be able to sit.
yes,
You
we
getting
are getting
Great.
applications.
Thank
yes.
you, Dr. Doherty.
All right.
And I have my first meeting with the screening committee tomorrow, so.
Oh, awesome.
Good, so it's in process. We go to bids
You
and
have a question?
donations
I
in
actually
a
had
second.
something on this. No, it was a
Okay.
comment. I'm
Yes,
just
Mrs.
wondering,
Doctor.
since the process is starting, if we came prepared for this meeting to make suggestions, perhaps the school
Suggestions
committee
on-
the finance, on the search, the qualities that you'd like to be looking for.
Well, I think that's what, on the 2nd, you're going to
On
do
the
that.
Right,
second,
but
we-
I'm
it will
saying,
be on
since
the-
you're already starting it, you're starting it sooner than the 2nd, it might be helpful for you to get our ideas about what you're looking for.
Well, the screening committee isn't going to be interviewing until the 5th.
Never mind. Sorry, I thought you were
June
saying it
2nd,
was
Drew.
starting before. Sorry.
Could,
It's just the organization.
readdress that on the 2nd of June, I
Oh,
believe.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some bids and
we do.
donations to accept, perhaps motions in that regard.
Donations. Move to accept a donation from the Friends of Reading High Baseball in the amount of $3,239.15 to be used to support a coaching assistant.
Do we have a
Second.
second? We have a second discussion. Okay, those in favor of the motion? That would be 6-0.
Mr. Chair, move to accept the donation from the Coolidge School Science Olympiads Support Group in the amount of $1,000 to be used to support the head coach's stipend.
Second.
We have a second discussion. Those in favor of the motion? 6-0. Next.
Move to accept the donation from the Reading PSST in the amount of $2,925 to be used to support 2 instructor positions as part of the RMHS drama program.
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Those in favor of the motion? 6-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Table.
Move to approve the open session minutes dated April 23rd, 2014.
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Move to accept. Those are accepted by 6-0.
Mr. Chair, move
Next
to
one.
approve the open session minutes dated April 29th, 2014.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion? That would be 6-0 again, and
Mr.
fine.
Chair, move to approve the open session minutes dated May 6th, 2014.
Okay. Second we have, and those in favor of the motion? Be 6-0, thank you. All right. A motion to adjourn. There we go.
I'd love to make a motion to adjourn. Move to adjourn.
Second.
Is there a second? There is a second. We are adjourned, May 19th,
Thank you.
2014. Thank you.